must say, because I've worked, as you know, I work in medical market research, that's what I do, so I've seen all this. And I've got to say this, particularly with young people with mental health issues, where they fall between 16 and 18, that's been a real problem, getting them help, because they're not quite, a child, and they're not an adult.
And do you find that health professionals are reluctant to diagnose a young person as having exactly, it's the labelling that they're trying to avoid. But the problem with that is it often means that they are receiving the services they need, the support they need later, and potentially damage.
I think mental health, and I'm sure it's a big problem with the police, particularly in the urban areas like this, is a real problem, because I'm sure the prisons are full of people who really shouldn't be there. They just need some better management in a way. However, going on, alcohol-related problems are big problems, and particularly in the area where Liverpool Community Radio is cited, which is in Kensington and Tubebrook. But I'm sure it's the same for most in the urban areas. I'm not just citing that one. What do you think about restricting off licences and the times they open? And also there's an issue around, particularly in urban areas, privately owned houses of multiple occupation, which are then accessed by other areas, for instance, St Helens and Mill. And terrible way to put this is anyway, but sort of exporting their problems really, and therefore they all end up in a place like Tubebrook, where there's been a lot of problems with this. And the local MP, Stephen Twigg, is working very hard with the community to try and address it. What thoughts do you have about this?
I attended a public meeting about 2 months ago in Tubebrook, a great deal of public concern about it, and similarly in Kensington. What I'm really excited about is that Liverpool City Council is pioneering an idea which will allow them to draw a boundary around a neighbourhood and say, this neighbourhood has reached a critical point at which the allowing of any further licences to sell alcohol, or properties with multiple occupation, or places that are refuges for people with alcohol abuse problems, will have a critical negative impact on the community. Now, it's a new thing, and they have to get the government to agree that they can do it. But they're trialling it in Kensington. We're looking to see if they can trial it in Tubebrook as well. And if it succeeds, what it will mean is that within those areas, the City Council's licensing committee will be able to refuse a licence. Now, at the moment, what happens is, if they receive an application for a licence, and if that licence complies with the current national licensing standards, the local authority hasn't got a great deal of leeway. They generally have to allow the licence, because if they don't, they face legal costs, because the applicant will appeal and will win their case, and then you've just paid a lot of money to defend an indefensible position legally. If the council get this agreement and can go forward with these ideas, it will mean that they will be able to say, no, within this area, notwithstanding the national legal requirements for licensing, within this area, we can determine what the critical points are.
And is that allowable in law?
Yes, and it's being developed actively at this moment in Liverpool, and I'm absolutely delighted. I'm working with Councillor Nick Small and Ros Gladden. They are absolutely understanding of the problem. In fact, Liverpool has been pioneering this concept of a wet facility, where if you are a street drinker, you've got an alcohol problem, you are a chronic alcoholic. At the moment, you see them sitting in bus shelters. It can be from 8:30 in the morning. Once the hostels close their doors, they're out on the street, and all they do is drink, because that's what their compulsion leads them to do. What the wet facility allows is that they can come into the shelter and sit and consume their alcohol, but they are then able to be approached by other agencies, so health service workers, housing workers, local authority staff who can work with them with other social problems. It's a hub, and it brings them off the street. The problem we've got is finding somewhere that will have it.
I know, we had this conversation with Louise Bodder, because I think there was a pilot like this a while back as well, and it worked.
Yeah.
And then it closed. I don't know whether the funding ran out, but as you quite rightly say, it's an NIMBY thing, isn't it? I mean, they all wanted to go away. We wanted to feel somewhere, you know.
What you saw, they only ran it for a month, and for that month, crime related to street drinking absolutely fell through the floor. The drinkers themselves, the people themselves, found that they could talk to other people that could get there. Some of them have ulcers, they have all sorts of health problems related to their addiction, and they would be able to get treatment for that. They could talk through sometimes why it is they were in the position that they were. And so it was everybody said this is a great thing. Now we're looking for a location. I think it's places where this is a problem should have one of these wet facilities. Because in Chew Brook, for example, it removes them from the parks where families want to go and enjoy the park with their children.
Do they have to go, or are they just is it sort of outreach workers?
It's outreach, and it is word of mouth.
And they will go, won't they?
And they do go. They did, and certainly for the pilot that we saw working, it did happen. I know that Wirral Borough Council is going to develop one in Birkenhead, where there's a chronic problem around Hamilton Square. So they're actively working on that. In Chester, the city of Chester has a wet facility, well established and recognised as a centre of excellence. So I think we know it works. We just have to persuade people that it isn't going to be another one of those factors that drags a neighbourhood down.
Well, yeah, I mean, and also there's a side issue. It's probably not as big a problem, but there is a problem with prostitution on Shield Road particularly. They don't know, can't work out, the local people can't work out whether these people are local or whether they're being bussed in, for this. But they're out all day, and they can be there in the bus stops and things like that from in the morning too. So I'm approaching them. Now, it's not obvious necessarily in the sense that they're not walking up and down, like Sunset Boulevard or something. But nevertheless, it's there, and there's children walking along that road.
Well, it has to be combated, and I'm sure that the police are aware of it and do respond when it's reported. And I take the view that it's a crime and it must be dealt with as a crime. We do support organisations like Personal Social Services, PSS, who work with street sex workers to help them turn their lives around so that they don't.
And I'm all in favour of that. I think most people would. And even the people of Chew Brook don't think of the people that are alcohol-related issues or prostitution as being. They don't want them locked up, actually. They want them helped, and I think that's a rather nice thing, because they see them with people with problems. So I think it has to be a multidisciplinary approach. But nevertheless, it's not just in an urban area. It's a domestic residence area.
Just around the corner, both juniors and senior schools. So I can see that it is a problem, and I was aware of it when I used to represent the area as a Member of Parliament, and of course the police. It is unfortunately one of those locations that has a long history of it, but we just never give up. We just keep on working on it.
All right, and Leslie, you have committees that are serving into the police commission here. Youth, you have a youth committee.
I've established a youth advisory group. We had our first meeting back in July, and we're going to be meeting again in October. And this is a group of young people. I don't appoint them. They nominate themselves. They come from a range of groups, as diverse as Sefton Youth Advisors, Housing Association, youth groups, the police cadets, but also the scouts. So almost any youth parliament, for example. So it's as many groups as we can find that have young people who come together to discuss the issues affecting them. And my objective is to invite them to think about the work that the police are doing that impacts upon them. So within the Criminal Justice Board, which is when the partnership where all of the criminal justice agencies, police, prisons, youth offending teams and so on, all come together to talk about the criminal justice system. And that has a subgroup that looks at how does the criminal justice system impact on young people. And I'd like my youth advisory group to consider some of the work of the people doing, within the criminal justice system, and give us their views.
Before it was actually become stock in trade or a process or a policy.
Exactly. To tell us how they think the fact, you see, here's an interesting change that's just happened. Local authorities now are required to provide appropriate alternative adults for young people when they're taken into custody. So if somebody comes into custody and they haven't got a parent, then there has to be, at the point in which they come into the custody suite, there has to be an alternative adult available. Not a police officer, not somebody, not a lawyer, but somebody who is able to effectively be a friend to that individual. Local parental. And that the young person has to be given the option, do they want this person to sit in with them or not? And I'm told that while in the short time that this has been operating, around 60% of young people say they will accept the attendance of the alternative adult. So that's an interesting development, and I think it's something that this group could usefully discuss.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a great idea. I know, but I think it depends on the appropriate adult, doesn't it? You'd have them from the hanging and flogging brigade, or you could have them with a reasonable liberal attitude.
Well, generally, I think what tends to happen across the 5 local authority areas is that the appropriate adult is generally a social worker or somebody with that.
Yes. Background, so these things. You'd have to really, wouldn't you? Yeah. And I do think that young people, I mean, I know I work, my co-presenter is a 17-year-old schoolgirl from Notre Dame. Right. Yes. Brilliant. And a very strong, you would really like, her name's Jade Burns, and she's a strong, powerful woman. That's what she is. And we get on really, really well. And that's how it should be. Yes. I'm in the third age, and I mean, she's just coming up to it, and yet we form a really good women's partnership. Yes. And I think that's how it should be. You've also got ethnic communities feeding into this, and the disabled, and lesbian, gay, LGBT.
These are police advisory groups. They work more to the force, so they are more immediately focused, and the force themselves have had these groups working for some time. There's an independent advisory group that advises the force around faith issues, for example, so that Jewish, Muslim, Hindu communities, Buddhist communities, the Christian communities can all tell the force of issues that are affecting them, crime, vandalism, hate crime, that sort of thing. And similarly, they've got a very strong, they're bringing all those groups together under one umbrella, which I think is great.
And lastly, as you've got a youth group, are you going to have a seniors group?
Well, I go out and meet seniors in all different walks of life, and I'm not sure whether Liverpool has one. I've not come across it, but Wirral has a Older People's Parliament. Mm-hmm. I've attended that. And when I go to the Have Your Say meetings that the police organise across Merseyside, it's very often older people who attend them. So I do go along and listen, and I've attended home watch groups and so on. But I've been in discussions with some representatives of Merseyside's Pensioners Association, and I think they're going to be inviting me along to one of their meetings.
Yes, I would imagine that the older you get, the more systems you can work through, let's put it that way, and therefore you probably will get more representation that way. But I'm a great believer that I think now, because particularly within politics as well, the seniors should have a voice, and a voice up at the table. Whereas I think traditionally it was thought of, certainly in politics, that they're there anyway.
Well, if you look at the colour of my hair, Brenda, I consider myself on the verge of it.
Well, now is the time to get in on it with the rock and roll generation, Jane. Isn't it great? Listen, thanks so much for seeing me. I know you're a busy woman, and perhaps we can, next year when we're on FM, you'll come on and you'll talk to me, because we will be all over Merseyside.
Fantastic. I'd love to.
All right. Thanks very much.